So these two theorems that we're going to talk about right here basically tell us that we can tell if two lines are parallel or perpendicular based on what their slopes are. So for slopes of parallel lines have the same slope. So we already know that parallel lines look like this. Basically, they never touch. But I can also tell from an equation. So let's say I had y equals 2x plus 3. Well, as we recall from our last video, my slope is 2. It's the number in front of x. Well, a parallel line to that would be y equals 2x minus 7. So lines are parallel when they have the same slope. Perpendicular lines, on the other hand, perpendicular lines have slopes that are opposite reciprocals. So when I say opposite, I mean opposite signs. So positive, negative. One's positive, the other's negative. And reciprocals means that I'm basically flipping the fraction. So let's look at an example. Let's say I had that my slope was 2/3. The opposite reciprocal of that would be, first I would flip it. So instead of 2/3, I'd have 3/2. And then I'd have the opposite sign. So since this one was positive, this one would become negative. So opposite sign. And flipped. So when looking at a picture, first perpendicular lines, what those look like is that they intersect at a 90-degree angle. So they look like that. And then if I were to have an equation, let's say, just using that same example, one would have a slope of 2/3 x, while the other would have the slope of the opposite reciprocal. So I flip it, 3/2, and then the opposite sign. And so those would be perpendicular lines. Okay, and then just to note, any two vertical lines are always going to be parallel. So it just looks like this. Any two horizontal lines are also parallel. And then vertical and horizontal lines are always perpendicular. So if I have a vertical line and then a horizontal line, they're always going to be perpendicular. And then something just to note here again, remind you of Hoy Vux. So a Vux, that's always going to be my vertical line. So the V stands here for vertical. Here, let me write it this way. Vux, vertical, undefined slope, and it's going to be x equals some number. So any two vertical lines are always going to be x equals a number. Horizontal lines, on the other hand, are always going to be y equals a number. And that's going to be my Hoy. So horizontal, 0 slope, so m equals 0, and it's y equals a number. Okay, that's it for this video. Go ahead and go on to the next one where we will look at some graph examples.